Hey, and welcome back to the Hyperfence. Today again, and happy to have you on camera again after you lost your camera virginity last time. So back with Steve today, and just discussing one thing. I'm still on the point. Proxies are one thing from the past, and everyone should get rid of his proxies. They're just made in hell. But as we're so often on discussions with customers, and you try to convince me that proxies aren't that bad as I'm thinking of. So that's why I want to talk today with you on camera about proxies and Azure Stack HCI and Arc. And you can share some of your experience and maybe goodness about proxies with me. I don't think you can convince me, but yeah.
Yes. So I think with proxies, it is something that some organizations just have to have for monitoring that traffic and filtering that traffic. So again, with Azure Stack HCI and the tools that it uses, such as Azure Arc, we try to make that simpler. So rather than having sort of lots of complexity of having loopholes to jump through, so trying to just provide any documentation that's relevant and give some pointers of what you need to do to configure your environment to use that proxy, because as I said, some organizations it's a must have and they need to have it. So I guess we can sort of cover off. There's a number of options that we have around the proxy. So with first one being it is configurable with Network ATC. So you when you're configuring which is the recommended approach.
So you mean you came prepared?
A little prepared, yeah.
So luckily that I wear my new Experts Life hoodie, so that I will be warm when you're just overrolling me with all these proxy goodness. By the way, thanks to Barrett Waters for sending that one over, and yeah, keeping me warm in that proxy discussion. So you already said one is configurable through Network ATC, but to be honest, now you will explain me that everything is easy and I just configure Network ATC and I will be happy. I don't think so.
No, so again, I think with the proxy, there's 3 locations that the proxy needs to be set, and only one of those is handled by Network ATC. But ultimately, the goal will be to use that for all configurations. That there's work in the pipeline to get that done. And what that means is that when you configure your proxy for your cluster, that you set it once, and then whenever you add new nodes to your cluster, it will automatically just get that configuration and mean that there's no hiccups when it comes to that node reporting in any metrics via Azure Arc. It won't cause any issues with Windows updates and things. So and Network ATC, we are heading in that direction. That should be the de facto when it comes to the configuration, because it helps you with that network configuration drift and can highlight when there's any configuration issues. But also it validates your network configuration, which is great. So let me just bring up here. Okay, so with Network ATC, there are some proxy overrides which you can set. And as I mentioned, this means that whenever you add nodes to your cluster, they will automatically receive those. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen here. Okay, so
yeah. What I've learned, you went through all that pain and updated the documentation yourself, correct?
No, so I think what I discovered was that with Network ATC, of those 3 locations, Network ATC only sets the proxy in one of those 3 locations, because Network ATC initially was just focusing on the operating system of Azure Stack HCI, and it didn't take into consideration Azure Arc, because again, Azure Arc is proxy aware. So if you configure your if you configure Arc to use a proxy, even if there's no default route on the network to get out to the internet or the firewall blocks that, it can go via the proxy to get that. So again, with Network ATC, when you're building your intent, and this is at a cluster level, what it allows you to do is have this new net intent global proxy override, which allows you to apply whatever your proxy settings are and any bypass addresses, because again, this will push all sort of HTTPS traffic, which does mean that sometimes with remote PowerShell and some PowerShell commands, when you're running those, it will force those via the proxy. So again, it's key to have those exceptions that you need, such as your internal domain, so that it bypasses the proxy. Maybe if you're using WSUS internally as a source for your updates, again, have that as an exception, just so you're not pushing that additional traffic via the proxy when it's just going to be internal traffic. Yeah, so as it runs through, it's a case of just building that variable with your proxy settings, and then add it as part of your net intent and as that proxy override. And again, there are options there where you can, if you need to update an additional URL, again, you can just go through the same command and the same process. But as I mentioned, this only applies for one of those areas. So I guess what I probably should do is touch on the areas that the proxy would be needed. So within this documentation, we've got listed out how to configure the proxy, and basically the different pages or the different locations that needs to be set and the reason behind that. Okay, so as you can see, so within this documentation, the proxy lists out how to set the proxy. There are three main areas for Azure Stack HCI, but then also this document also provides links off to those other services that you may deploy onto Azure Stack HCI that need to be proxy aware. Okay, so the first area is this is for the just the Azure Stack HCI operating system. So this is used for the registration of the cluster when it synchronizes to the cluster, or when the cluster does its sync, just to report in how many CPUs are running in the cluster and to get that sort of billing information. So again, this is important to meet those requirements of having the cluster reporting in every 28 days at a minimum. Twice a day. So with this one, what we need to do is we need to use the win inet proxy PowerShell commandlet. And so with this, it's an additional module that needs to be installed, and it allows you to, again, you need to use the proxy setting per user as 0, so that it becomes a machine level proxy rather than a user proxy. And again, you can set your proxy server along with any bypass URLs that you need. So again, this is the first one that you need, and it is that's actually the one that Network ATC will implement on your behalf. So again, it will allow the registration of the cluster successfully and let you get past that part. However, once that is applied, now as part of the registration, there is also the Arc integration of the nodes. So again, Arc needs to be made aware that those proxy details are. Within this documentation, it does show you how to set the proxy after the fact. So again, you would go through the registration, and you would then it would fail because Arc could not communicate. What this documentation lets you then go and do is set the system environment variable, again with your HTTP S proxy or HTTPS proxies and the exceptions, and then restart the service. But what you can do is if you set these environment variables prior to registration, then what will happen is when Arc tries to install, this environment variable is one of those areas that it will check for to find out what the proxy settings should be, and it will automatically take those into the installation of the Arc agent for that. So again, that's it allows the Arc onboarding to go via the proxy. So I think what we maybe need to do is maybe get that changed slightly. Just again, what you do is you don't need this last command because the Arc agent is not installed.
So how would you recommend to do that? So I have a new onboarding, and I'm now putting my HCI servers and into the domain, or my with my Arc servers in the domain.
Yeah.
Can we run that, for example, through a GPO or centralized configuration management?
Yes. So again, what the recommended approach would be for the first option around the for the operating system would be to use Network ATC, so that you know that one of those is already applied and you've got that handled. With the second one around the Arc for servers, there's a couple of ways you could do that, because the Azure Stack HCI nodes need to be domain joined. You could have a group policy which sets this system environment variable, or you could have it as part of your build process. So as you're going through the build, one of the things that you do is that you set these environment variables manually as part of your build script. But again, with this one, it does mean that you need to do this on every node. It isn't something that would be inherited to new nodes, so it would have to be incorporated into your build process, which is why the group policy approach is probably one of the better option.
Yeah, but that also allows you to change it afterwards if required.
Yes. Yeah, it does. So again, you can, with the way that the group policy gets applied, you can then update that, and then when there's a GPO refresh, you can look to update those settings. However, with the Arc agent, it is hard coded at point of install. So if you change your proxy server after the fact, then there's some documentation out there about updating your proxy configuration for Arc enabled servers. So again, it's a couple of command lines which will repoint the agent to a new proxy, and then
that's maybe a good thing we should do in the description, so that we're not discussed it how do you change the proxy configuration for the Arc agent today, but it will be in the description so that everyone can read it if required. Because what I think is, we all know the situation that you need to replace at some point your proxy, and we will not keep the IP addresses for some reason, or you want to not do a cut over, maybe just a handover between the machines, then you would require Arc to also change this configuration. And as we know, Arc agent reinstallation is a pain in the ass.
Yeah, and again, the way that it is integrated with Azure Stack HCI, that when a node is Arc enabled, it is tied to your Arc HCI cluster. So again, there's a link within in the background.
And it becomes even harder if it's 23H2, where the Arc agent is always enabled, and is part of the registration of the node, is part of the installation package, more or less, and an automated installation. So you will not be able to change the proxy configuration afterwards.
Yep.
So it's maybe a good feedback, Steve. We should ask the Arc team to check on reboot if there's any proxy configuration changes, or Arc agent reboot, or Arc service reboot.
Yeah. Because again, that would be if you had hundreds of Arc servers out there, it could take some time to repoint those, and again, that would be a good way of doing it to get it to check that environment variable on periodically, as you say, even start or restart of the agent. with the proxy as well, there was just one last location that needs to be set. And let me just share my screen again. And this is basically for Windows updates. So again, this won't always be needed, but there is a separate command which needs to be used, which is the netsh WinHTTP set proxy. So again, this is used for not only for the Windows or the Windows updates, but also for your cloud witness. So if your cluster has a cloud witness, but the has to pass a proxy for internet access, then again this would need to be set. So again, this could be part of your build script that you're going to put there when you building new servers, and then or building your nodes, and then again you would just need to have it incorporated in there for any additional nodes. Just on this with the whole proxy discussion is that currently the Azure Stack HCI doesn't support SSL inspection of packets of traffic as well. So again, that is something you would need to consider, that if your proxy.
That's one thing we always don't support SSL inspection with. If it's OneDrive, if it's Azure Storage, if it's Azure Backup, it's one general topic within the Microsoft services that SSL inspection is not supported, because you're breaking the encryption. And from the backend perspective, even if you're repackaging it with the right hash, with the right certificates, it still could happen that Azure expects it as man-in-the-middle attack, and then drops the packages. And that's one common issue we see in those configurations. So that's why we always recommend, or Microsoft always recommends, to avoid SSL inspection, except with there are appliances out there who are supported because they were part of the development process, more or less. But otherwise, it's, or if the partner, let's say if the partner supports it on his own, we are fine. But then the partner needs to take these support cases. If not, we do not support SSL inspection for any encrypted traffic coming from our agents.
And so again, that definitely is worth pointing out, because we've had a couple of customers where we've been impacted by that. And I guess the one last thing is just to point out is, with those three separate methods of setting the proxy, there's a couple of sort of gotchas. So the first one is wildcard symbols. So they're not all, because it's three different techniques to apply the proxy. They use slightly different wildcard and separator values. So basically for the NetSH WinHTTP set proxy, it uses star as a wildcard. So it would be let's use experts live. So it would be star dot experts live .local if you want to bypass that. But with the net intents and the environment variable and the WinINet proxy, it's just a dot, so you don't need a star. So you put dot experts live .local, it's your domain name. And then also the other one which I mentioned there was the separator between your different values, is that for and the net intent, just check my notes here, the net intent, the WinHTTP proxy and the environment variable, it uses a comma as a separator value, but the NetSH WinHTTP set proxy uses a semicolon. So again, we had some issues with the customer where they were just copying their list of exceptions between each command, and there was that formatting issue with the with that exception list. So the exception list, although it looked like it was being accepted, it was just being ignored because it thought it was just one long URL, and we did see some issues.
Yeah, but with that said, is there anything you would add to that discussion, or do you say, okay, with that stuff you're pretty much fine?
Yeah, I think applying applying it in those 3 locations, I think you're pretty much fine. I think that in certain organizations, as we said earlier, is a proxy is a must. That and it can be difficult to get an exception to mean that a certain solution doesn't use a proxy at all. So again, within the components which are used, the operating system, the Arc agent, the Windows Updates agents, it's been incorporated to support a proxy, because as you said earlier, they are they may be quite a thing from the past, but they're still around. There's still lots of proxies around, and it would be naive not to support those that support that functionality. Yeah, so I think setting those 3 locations, and I think you should be able to deploy successfully.
Perfect. So you still not convinced me that that proxies are okay. I still think there's a made in hell, but at least we have a solution for Arc and HCI, so that we can at least build a working solution without get rid of the proxies. Yep. I should get a get rid of proxies t-shirt. Something for Christmas.
I'll add it to the list.
No, perfect. Again, thank you for being with me and on that controversial topic.
Yep.
I hope we helped a few people out there with the conversation. I know that you're working also on an article to publish with all your findings, and that you're still in deep discussion with the product group to update the documentation so that we find, or that we can at least also being prepared for 23H2 and having don't have that conversations that often.
Yep.
For everyone else, thank you for being with us. If you want to see more of those discussions videos, leave us comments, subscribe to the channel. As you always do, we see the numbers rising. And yeah, there will be more about networking with Accutech, for example. I will work with Accutech on SDN automation, which is also highly asked by Kyle, where we did the SDN video. And he wants to see how they are doing it. So there are a lot of more topics, discussions coming. I'm also restarting the FAQ series, maybe seeing you at one day doing your own FAQ, Steve.
We'll see.
Perfect. Then have a great rest of the week, and yeah, enjoy working with proxies.
Thanks, everyone.